Hello again, and welcome back to the Slow Flowers Podcast with Deborah Prinzing, episode 297. This is the weekly podcast about slow flowers and the people who grow and design with them. It's all about making a conscious choice, and I invite you to join the conversation and the creative community as we discuss the vital topics of saving our domestic flower farms and supporting a floral industry that relies on a safe, seasonal, and local supply of flowers and foliage. This podcast is brought to you by slowflowers.com, the free online directory to more than 850 florists, shops, and studios who design with local, seasonal, and sustainable flowers, and to the farms that grow those blooms. It's the conscious choice for buying and sending flowers. And thank you to our lead sponsor for 2021, Farm Girl Flowers. Farm Girl Flowers delivers iconic burlap wrap bouquets and lush, abundant arrangements to customers across the U.S., supporting more than 20 U.S. flower farms by purchasing more than $9 million of U.S.-grown fresh and seasonal flowers and foliage annually, and by providing competitive salaries and benefits to 240 team members based in Watsonville, California, and Miami, Florida. Discover more at farmgirlflowers.com. For each podcast episode this year, we'll also thank three of our major sponsors. Our first thanks goes to Red Twig Farms. Based in Johnstown, Ohio, Red Twig Farms is a family-owned farm specializing in peonies, daffodils, tulips, and branches, a popular peony bouquet by mail program, and their Spread the Hope campaign where customers purchase 10 tulip stems for essential workers and others in their community. Learn more at redtwigfarms.com. And a quick note for all you garden lovers, we're giving away 5 virtual tickets to the Great Grow Along, a new 3-day virtual gardening festival taking place this weekend, May 19th through 21st, online, of course. The Great Grow Along features more than 40 sessions across 6 topic tracks, and you might win a free ticket to attend. The first 5 listeners who post a comment in today's show notes for episode 497 will receive the complimentary registration, valued at $29.95. Be sure to tell us what's growing in your garden in the comments section. If you miss out on this giveaway, the folks at the Great Grow Along have also shared a $5 off promo code for all of our listeners to join in. That code is Slow Flowers Discount. Several past guests of the Slow Flowers podcast are in the lineup, and you'll want to grab their presentations, including Lorene Edwards-Forkner, Sue Getz, Kelly Norris, and Allison and Sean McManus. And our friend Terry Spate of Cottage in the Court, author of a forthcoming book for Bloom Imprint, will also be presenting. Sounds like the perfect way to celebrate a new season. Well, I'm so happy to welcome Jill Brook to the Slow Flowers podcast today. Jill is the creator and editorial director of Flower Power Daily, an online news site for all things flowers. Jill and I were introduced to one another about a year ago through our mutual friends at Fleur de Ville, the floral fashion exhibition that was staged at the Northwest Flower and Garden Festival in 2020. We've chatted by phone a few times, and I appreciate it when Jill sends me newsy emails about how flowers are showing up in our world. Jill has a journalist's uncanny ability to identify and unearth, pun intended, the floral angle to any news topic of the day. If it's a trending hashtag on any subject, Flower Power Daily will elevate the conversation through flowers. A few examples to illustrate my point. In the performing arts, Jill wrote about the Barcelona Opera playing to flowering plants instead of people. In fashion, Flower Power Daily recently covered the new Kenzo and Vans shoe collaboration featuring floral prints. In politics, sports, wellness and mental health, food and wine, and beyond, Flower Power Daily interprets every subject through a floral lens. It's a way to view the world that I wholeheartedly endorse. We all want flowers to be universally important, and the stories covered by Flower Power Daily underscore this truth, that humans need flowers. Here's a bit more about Jill Brook. Jill has been a CNN correspondent, an editor-in-chief at Travel Savvy, Avenue, and Show Circuit, a columnist for the New York Post, Adweek, and Metropolitan Home, and her work has appeared in the New York Times and many women's magazines. With all this professional experience, Jill says that nothing ever felt as right as Flower Power Daily, which she established in February of 2019. Jill gathered seasoned professionals who share the same passion for flowers and respect nature's gifts and insights to help curate the stories, videos, and images you can find each day at Flower Power Daily. You can visit Flower Power Daily's website, subscribe to its newsletter, and follow more flower posts on Instagram, and I'll share those links in today's show notes for you. As Jill says, if you look at life through the prism of flowers, you will be happier. She believes that flowers are here for a reason and that they teach great life lessons. Flowers comfort and congratulate. They express sentiments without many words. No matter what is going on in your life, flowers are here for you, she says. Well, this is a lively conversation, and I know you'll find it entertaining and educational, so let's jump right in and get started. Welcome back to the Slow Flowers Podcast with Deborah Prinzing. I have a very special guest for you today, and I would love to introduce you to Jill Brook. Hi, Jill.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Oh, this has been on my wish list for a while. And Jill is the founder and editor-in-chief of a website called Flower Power Daily. Let me say that again, Flower Power Daily. It is the first all-floral news site, and it's been on my radar since we were introduced by mutual friends about a year ago. So welcome, Jill, and tell us about Flower Power Daily.
Well, Flower Power Daily looks at how flowers intersect with news stories and pop culture. And it realizes that flowers are not superficial or frivolous, but have been part of historical cultural movements. It is the only entity at all that literally soothes and comforts. As what we use it to comfort, we use it to congratulate people, we use it to acknowledge celebrations. And more importantly, flowers are also used to express emotions when words cannot. Mm-hmm. What else can you think of that does all that? Literally, it's a span of emotions. Every socioeconomic society on the planet responds the same way, acknowledges its beauty. And in fact, there was a quantum physicist that looked at flowers as a mathematical entity and realized that its beauty is perfection. Yes. Because it's how it all collectively works together. And it is a miracle. And in a way, that's what Georgia O'Keeffe was telling everybody when she did her big paintings. And, male art critics, of course, looked at it and said, oh, this is scandalous, it's sensual, it's sexual, when in fact, she just wanted people to stop. And once you start looking at a flower and you look at its interior and the wonder of it, you will literally be calmed, you will be soothed, and you will be inspired. And also in what I call multicolorism versus multiculturalism, I think that the garden is such a great place because it has a welcoming mat. It shows that there can be beauty, whether they're tall flowers like the iris or big pillowy flowers like the peony, all different colors, all different sizes, short, tall, wide, thin, varieties of colors. Some get along, some don't. It is such like a microcosm of the human experience, but nonetheless expressed through beauty.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like there is probably not a topic on the planet that you cannot find the flower connection for. So can you just tell the listeners of the Slow Flowers podcast when they come to Flower Power Daily, what they see, and then how the other ways to interact with you through social media and your newsletter? You've got a lot of moving parts, and they're all, bringing people information at wherever they want to receive it, right?
Well, I have to say that our Instagram is, short burst of happy news through the prism of flowers every day, which will be really interesting facts. And then our website expands on that because I realize that people have short attention spans and they don't necessarily want to devote that much time sometimes to material. Mm-hmm. So they'll check us out on Instagram and they'll get their daily burst of fun facts. Like, for instance, yesterday we did a great piece about trees. And what it turned out that somebody who had given a TED talk, this incredible scientist, realized that mother trees know their offspring. And she did this incredible experiment where there were seedlings of her own and seedlings from someplace else. And it turns out that the seedlings that were her own were nurtured more, and that, the network within a tree took care of the seedling even at her own expense. And, we are now looking much more and investing more in the science of trees and flowers to really teach us wonderful lessons in how to live our lives more fully and happily. We did a great thing on the corpse flower recently, because there was another study about that turns out that they're now creating stud farms. I kid you not, Deborah. Stud farms, because there's been so much inbreeding with this particular flower, which obviously the botanical gardens love so much, but they're dying out. So they had to find stud muffins, in a way, that will be able to breed with them so that this way they become stronger. And today we did a piece about mental health and flowers, because a lot of people are collaborating because flowers can be therapy. We did another story recently for Martin Luther King Day. Here's a perfect example, is that you may not have known, but, there were a lot of marches that weren't effective and, were really frightening. But then they decided, he and John Lewis and someone else, that when they did the march in Selma, they were going to wear Hawaiian leis that they got from a friend in Hawaii, because when people saw others wearing flowers, they wouldn't be scared. It wouldn't trigger fear, because flowers have always been an entity that, has been used to diffuse violence, right, as a metaphor. And indeed, it did. And that's why you also saw when John Lewis recently passed, how they put, and this was so beautiful, that in honor of him, they put rose petals all over the bridge. So yes, flowers are used in remarkable ways to, communicate among humans.
Well, I feel like what you're doing is elevating flowers to the conversation. I think it's a really hopeful act, and also a radical act, that you're, making sure that whenever national news story or cultural circumstance or incident or some art or architecture or Hollywood thing is happening, you're raising your hand over here and saying, we're going to write about how flowers factor into this. And I love that.
Every single news story. Like, here's an interesting fact. People are saying Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris. Did you know that Kamala in Sanskrit means lotus? She was named after the lotus flower because her mother, who was Indian, and if you think about it, the Indian culture has embraced flowers. I mean, think of the history of the marigold. I mean, right, it's really extraordinary. And, just ceremonially, I mean, I love reporting on, Indian culture and flowers. But anyway, her mother realized that the whole idea that through mud, this beautiful flower, despite any struggle, can emerge and be beautiful. So decided to name her and her sister influenced by flowers. And not only that, and then her middle name is, based on a goddess. And the reason is that any culture that celebrates goddesses will most likely be good to women. And, look at her destiny. It's from a flower. And there are other incredible stories also, in the gay rights movement. I think that most people don't realize that, in the lesbian community, LBG, whatever, yeah, just focusing on that sector right now, being respectful to, the whole beautiful, diverse umbrella, that the way that women would communicate with each other is by having violets. All right. And in fact, a play happened in the 1930s where it was referenced, and it became this big scandal because it was, under the radar, and then it wasn't.
It was the message of flowers.
the
Yeah.
message of flowers. And then obviously Oscar Wilde, who had the green carnation, and that was the symbolism, at a time, unfortunately, when Who You Decide to Love was censored and threatening.
Mm.
So flowers really have been used as a metaphor for centuries and centuries. I mean, we had another story that last week, also 2 weeks ago, I think, which was that we now know that flowers, we used to think that they were 135 million years old, and now it's been discovered they've been 250 million years old. But there's a really interesting story that I want to tell you, because flowers are healing entities, and the way we communicate with them, the act of giving a flower and receiving a flower, which again both people respond to, and it's about the Neanderthals. Do you know the story about the Neanderthals and flowers?
No, but I think we need to talk about that word. Tell me more.
All right, so the Neanderthals, for large pocket of history, were considered absolutely barbaric, awful, not refined, not educated. And that was the popular belief system for absolute centuries, until somebody in the 1950s started doing this, and just had this vision that I have to go to Iraq and I have to find this dig, and I'm going to uncover and unearth, material. And sure enough, he did. And what he found out is that the Neanderthals actually, when people died, they would give flowers. And that was a way to realize and re-examine that they were far more civilized than we had given them credit for. And this was obviously before Homo Deus, that incredible book. And not only were they more civilized, but the way that they used flowers to care for each other showed that they were actually more thriving communities than history had depicted it. And now it's completely shifted, all because of a flower.
Jill, you are so research-based. I know you have a team of freelancers who work for Flower Power Daily, but talk a little bit about how you produce all this content that is, in a way you think, oh, it's a single topic. No, actually, you're covering every topic. You've probably covered professional sports as well as, I don't know, politics. I mean, you're kind of covering everything.
For the football and, the flowers of teams. And, if you think about it in sports, the Rose Bowl, and then Kentucky, the Kentucky Derby. And, again, it diminishes violence often, flowers. Why do we give it to sports heroes? And actually that started during, the Greek period with gladiators, and they had their and that's why we call them gladiolus. And, they had the crowns.
Right.
So again, it's, flowers are here to teach us so many lessons. And one of them is that to find peace and love and joy, and to diminish the ugliness of the world. It is not to ignore the ugliness of the world. It is to remind you that beauty and solace still exist.
Right.
That's the comforting part of it, is that it's not saying that, life isn't hard and that we have to navigate lots of struggles. It's saying that this entity, these flowers that grow all over Earth, are here to give you beauty. And I have advocated for so long that they should be in everybody's toolbox. And because we all need something in our lives when we are stressed, that literally we just go to and can calm us and give us new perspective. And anytime you are around flowers, either smelling them or being around them, it just makes you happier. So have it in your toolbox, and make sure, like even Andrew Weil, when he was talking about, the elements of health, I mean, it's not, a surprise to you and me who love flowers like we do, that he said that's one of the the top 7, you need flowers around you. Now, the argument for flowers all the time is, but they die. Right. They only last 4 or 5 days.
Right.
And you can look at it like that and say, yeah, that's true. I don't care what anybody says, that, they don't last a long time. And no matter what you put in, whether it's the vodka, the this or the that, no. But that is the lesson, because the lesson of flowers the lessons are that you are to savor every great moment when you have it. and that there are cycles of life. Life is a roller coaster ride. So there's a beginning, middle, and end. And savor the beauty, the carpe diem, which I have written like literally on, on my desk. Enjoy the moment of flowers when you have it. And that's also why I like the Japanese culture, because ikebana, for instance, most of your viewers would and listeners, I'm sure, would enjoy them. Ikebana requires that each arrangement has a bud, which represents, birth and beginning, something that's ripe, and something that is fading and dying.
Mm-hmm.
And dying is not to be feared.
Mm-hmm.
It is just to recognize that nature is a cycle and to embrace that cycle and not to be afraid of it.
Yeah.
And that is what gardening does. It teaches us not to be afraid. When you work with the soil and you see how things grow and things have how they cycle, and you realize that you are supposed to enjoy these good moments and not think it's a dress rehearsal. It's that moment right now. Pay attention. You have a beautiful rose. You have a tulip that's in bloom. Spend the 3 minutes to really enjoy it. And in a way, I have to just give you so much credit, Deb, because what you've done with the whole Slow Flowers movement, I have to say that there are some, I don't mean to be controversial here, but, I am not diminishing the horrible aspects of COVID and the losses on monumental levels. But as somebody who always looks at silver linings, COVID has, nature has pressed the pause button.
Mm-hmm.
And so A, who's boss,
Mm-hmm.
and B, it has pressed the pause button to make us, refocus our priorities and perspectives. And more people now, it's 20 million new gardeners have happened. And there was a recent study that just came out that said, interestingly enough, that now that anyone who finally experiences gardening and experiences flowers, they are going to continue doing it because it's so joyful, as you and I know. And what you have done, I call you one of the goddesses of the garden.
Oh, you're so sweet. Yeah.
And you and, Lady Bird and a few other people have been goddesses of the garden. And what your message has been is to slow down. And I have to say that before COVID, and especially living this, editor-in-chief life like my previous life, and everything was at such a fast, frenetic pace, and nobody had any time to do anything. And yet, what that robbed us of, to enjoy and savor the moment. And yet, even pre-COVID, this has been your message for a lifetime. And it just shows you that you got the memo, but now everybody else is. And it just anchors you as this person and this sage who, recognizes how important it is to savor the moment and slow down and really appreciate the process. Because, it's that chorus poem. It's not the destination you're going to, it's the journey getting there.
Okay, Jill, you're a doll. You get it. I don't have to explain slow flowers to you, which I so appreciate. You alluded to something about your past editor-in-chief life. So I want to talk about the path that you've taken, how flowers have pulled you along the path to launch Flower Power Daily, because you have an amazing credentials of, I'll share this in the introduction, but, you've been a CNN correspondent, editor-in-chief at Travel Savvy, Avenue, Show Circuit, and a columnist for the New York Post, Adweek, Metropolitan Home, as well as writing for the New York Times and many women's magazines. So you've done print, you've done TV, radio, like your life has been media. So where did you take a little side path over to flowers?
Well, again, it's not that I, tiptoed through the tulips and then said, I'm leaving one thing for the other. I think that flowers are always with us. This will take a little bit description, but hopefully, your audience will bear with me.
Oh, sure.
I think that the story is worth knowing only because we're so fearful sometimes about, what do I do? And we always don't have enough confidence that you never know what's around the corner. So yes, I am an extremely aesthetic person who've had flowers in their life always. I grew up, having the exposure. My father was European, and even you could go traveling in France, and they knew in Europe that you could just have a little bud vase with one little flower, and how it enhances, the experience. So I've always been around flowers. And what happened, and also because I was in media, and I covered the entertainment business. So I got a front row seat to the Colin Coweys, the Preston Bailey. I mean, everyone early on, because we were writing about these big events and, the big shows and everything else. So, I got a front row seat to see what excellence was. But in a way, you have to be schooled at, the absolute apex of excellence, because then you can bring it down a little bit and make it more relatable and accessible to others. But you have to understand the design elements. And also, I have an art history degree as well as a, writing degree. And we all at a certain point have to just close our eyes, and hopefully around flowers, and just say, be honest, what are you good at and what are you not good at? And what I really am good at is having a curious mind, a loving heart, and the ability to hear people's stories and write portraits of them and be a storyteller. So it wasn't that I came in here as this great botanist or gardener. I really came in here with wide eyes saying, teach me, I want to learn. And earlier on, when I was at the networks and working 14-hour days and everything else, I started my career working at ABC News Nightline. And while all my college and friends were there, they got off at regular hours and we're seeing each other. I'm at Nightline at midnight. And I said, well, you know what? I realize when I look around and you observe that I don't want to be competitive with my friends. And I need to maintain my college and high school friends, because when I mess up or I have questions or I don't know what to do, you don't want to tell your colleague, I have no idea what to do. So what you can do is you call up your girlfriends and you have your sisterhood and say, listen, this just happened to me. My boss yelled at me. My boss is this, or I don't know how to approach this story. What would you do? You need those friends. Yeah. So I had a dinner party every Saturday night at my house, potluck, and I would just put flowers on the table and we would do that. And it's, once you start just putting flowers on the table in your 20s, then you do it always because you just realize how pretty it is. Now, fast forward. So yes, I learned about flowers. I also now, because of all these experiences. And for everybody out there, we live life in chapters. Deb and I will tell you this when, you are seasoned woman, which we are, that you live life in chapters and trust the process, trust the journey, that when a door closes, another opens. It's really just about having a positive outlook and trying to have more gratitude than expectations. And just to say, okay, well, this didn't work out. And why did that person get this job? Because they're not as talented, or maybe they're more connected, or whatever it is. But just have faith that the more you learn, the more you love, the luckier you'll get. And, you'll be led, each experience will ferry you to someplace else. So now I want to get to the Flower Power Daily part, because it's true. I've worked for ABC, CBS, and, CNN and all these magazines, but I was working for other people. And there is the truth that you reach a certain number and all of a sudden, I didn't want to be the chorus of complainers. I realized that, women today, we're all on pioneer territory, and we are the first generation that's going to live 30 years longer. And many of us do want to work and be engaged. And how do you still have conversations with people and learn? You got to be doing something. So I dreamed up, I knew I wanted to do something to do with flowers. And also, and this is really the important part, everyone out there, I bet you have great ideas and you've thought about doing something and you've thought about cultivating them, but you have to have money to do it, and right. You need a mistake fund. And I know that there are so many people that just haven't had the opportunity. And just because you don't do it at 30, and what I've learned, and if there's any lesson I can give to the sisterhood here, is I would have liked to have done this 20 years ago for sure, but I couldn't. I had to support myself. I had to support myself. I didn't have 2 or 3 years not to have a paycheck.
Right.
And I didn't have, and then you have a child, and I had baseball expenses and school expenses. And once my son Parker was launched, it was like, okay, this is my time now.
Yep.
The runway may be a little smaller, but it's my time. And so I was able to invest in building this website. And I knew I didn't want to do print because, having covered media for all these places, I know that unfortunately advertising, because of Facebook and everything else,
it's migrating away from print, right?
It is. So, like I have a saying, Deb, that I always say, anytime you argue with reality, you will lose. So be clear about what reality is and don't be afraid of it, because once you have clarity is how you can then proceed.
Right.
And so I said, okay, I'm only going to do this as a website, and I'm going to look at how flowers, because there's so many amazing, floral entities, and they look at the floral business and they look at, beautiful arrangements, but they didn't look at how flowers intersect in news stories and in wellness, in food, in design, in art, in music, in culture. And I wanted to be that person that gave the respect to what flowers are metaphorically in all aspects of life. So every day you will see on our Instagram this gorgeous picture that, luckily, because of my previous life, which is the point, is that it's like a Seurat painting. Looking in right now, if somebody looked at my life, they would see, it makes total sense, but it didn't.
Right.
All these little dots are coexisting. So what happened is that because I treated people really well when I, in the roller coaster of life, you are high, you're low. I mean, trust me, I'm used to huge audiences that when, I would call from the New York Times, from CNN, from, CBS, people would take my calls. And when you call from Flower Power Daily that nobody's ever heard of, and you're starting last week, it's a humbling experience. And you just have to say, But what made it work is that the seeds that I planted over a 20-year career of always being kind to people and fair to people and having an integrity that they knew that even if they participated in Flower Power Daily, the photographers from around the world that I had worked with and had treated well said, Jilly, go ahead. I'm giving you the photographs for free here. You just put it on and you do this. And then, some people that I knew said, here are the books, start writing about it. And that is why that the reward isn't necessarily immediate when you treat people well, because you can steamroll and you can certainly, many people really succeed that way. But, the relationships when you're not the big time person really matter. And now as things are moving up and, as we'll discuss later, this other project that now has happened in this TV show, that's not an accident. I mean, it is. It's total luck,
right?
Because there are so many more brilliant people than me. And there are so many hardworking people that deserve, this and more. Though I have to say, though, Nicholas Kristof had this incredible quote, which, has been my North Star, which is that for some reason, especially with women, and I don't mean this I'm just saying in general, because they had so few opportunities until this moment of time, that there used to be this belief that if one person succeeded, it was at the expense of someone else.
Right.
But it's not that, because the universe is abundant. And when you collaborate and not feel and fight that feeling of competitiveness, you will realize that by creating a garden of great people in your posse, then you will then grow with them.
Yeah.
And look, that's what you've done.
This week, I want to take a break before continuing part 2 of my conversation with Jill and tell you about Jennifer Jewell, creator and host of Cultivating Place, a public radio program and podcast. Jennifer is a past guest of this podcast, and she will be speaking at the 2021 Slow Flower Summit in June as our capstone speaker. We're both hoping to share one another's programming with our listeners, and Jennifer has a bit to share about Cultivating Place in this next little clip.
No matter what kind of gardener you are, a houseplant jungle keeper, a windowsill or backyard beginner, a longtime flower farmer or rewilder, you know that essential connections exist between our gardens, the natural world, and planet Earth as a whole. I'm Jennifer Jewell, host of the award-winning public radio podcast, Cultivating Place. On this program, we explore not only how we garden, but why we garden and the meanings of our gardens, both big and small, to a greater world. On Cultivating Place, we talk with growers, scientists, artists, spiritual leaders, and thinkers from around the world. We celebrate how these interconnections support ourselves, our families, our communities, our natural environments, even our economies. This is a show that celebrates how our human impulse to garden feeds not only our bodies, but our spirits with deep meaning and joy. I believe the world we live in needs more joy, more connection, more green, and greater meaning. And our gardens offer us all of this. Cultivating Place engages and encourages you and your garden to know and grow the world more deeply. Join us. Subscribe to the Cultivating Place podcast wherever you get your podcasts, or listen on our website, cultivatingplace.com. Together, we grow better.
It's so great talking to you. I just, I have a million ideas that I want to ask you about relating to flowers and our lives. Can I just throw one at you and get your reaction?
Sure.
So we've had a lot of cable news in our house in the last year, mainly because we're home all the time, and it's kind of an evening ritual. And I have become fascinated that, of course, all these guests on these news shows are coming on from their living rooms or their kitchens. And I always look to see what the decor is and the flowers. And I'm sure you've got an opinion about this, but there's some political analysts who have a really excellent taste in flowers. And even, it just surprises me. So I want to know what have you observed that and sort of documented over the last year that our media landscape has changed?
It's totally strategic, all right, because they want their voices to be heard. And just like you are noticing a pleasing environment, we're doing a really interesting story that just speaks to this, is that if you look at every interior design magazine, every one of them has a prominent flower someplace in the design, right? It's always in the coffee table, it's in the kitchen, it's right wherever it is. So I just assigned somebody this story where they are taking many, like the top 20 major decorators, and taking one of their rooms and showing it without the flower in it, what it looks like. And I just, and this segs into something else that I think is really important. When I was at Gallery and I was at AD, all these places I've been, not only, not as an editor in charge, but like, begging for work and, writing for, what was really, interesting to me about, all these artists that I would have to write about, because, they knew I had this art history degree, and they would quote emerging artists, and they would get a full page, and for the painting, and yet you didn't see anything about florist. And one of the things that I am really, really proud of that Flower Power Daily has been able to do is that we champion florists from around the country. And moreover, as I say, that instead of paint, they use branches and blooms, and they should be regarded as an artist, just like that emerging painter in many of these magazines. And they work harder. And I don't want to say harder in the sense that, painters work hard too. I'm not saying that, but it's perishable.
Yeah.
Like with paint, you have your imagination and then you just think of what you want to draw, right? But, a florist has a lot of variables that just complicate their vision and their execution. So I have such incredible respect for them. So when I started out, which I think really did help boost Flower Power Daily just a drop, was I interviewed Jenny Tobin, who had 20 Oscar nominated films, and between Oscar and BAFTAs, from everything from The Favorite to Fantastic Beasts to Cinderella to, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Kingsman, like she's done everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. And this is a question I always ask people, and you can ask just at your conversation at home. And the question is, all right, so you've accomplished so much. Here's a crystal ball. What would you want that you haven't gotten? And to which she said, I would like to see once a credit on when I go into a film that, I work 12-hour days for months at a time to set the mood. And yet the nephew of some producer who just got coffee will get a credit as an assistant and the floral designer won't. And, that planted a seed also with me. And I said, that's really interesting because I want florists to be treated as the artists that they are.
Absolutely. I want to ask you what's on deck for you. You kind of hinted at it by mentioning Jenny Tobin, the florist who's got 20 Oscar and BAFTA, nominations under her belt, or films rather. So you've got some news to share about your next new thing you're doing, and I want to reveal it today.
Okay, we're going to reveal it. All right. So I want to rewind the tape just for one second to let people know that literally before this happened, I was speaking to my husband and I was lamenting, and I was saying, I've never had so much joy in any job because every day I'm learning something new and I'm working, how great is life when you get the best photography around the world about flowers.
Right.
And I love doing all that. But I said, why didn't I do this 20 years ago? Because I look at Martha and I look at everyone else. And, and my friend Leslie Lampert was in there also. And I want to just say this because we all need the sisterhood and great friends. So I almost didn't start Flower Power Daily because I said, I'm too old. And look at Martha Stewart. She's been doing this for 25 years. Like, who am I to think I'm going to do anything different?
Yep. But your point of view is so different than hers.
It is.
No one has your point of view.
And you want to know what Leslie said? And this is why you need a good girlfriend. She looked at me and she said, okay, so Martha Stewart is the, 5-star restaurant. She's John George. But you know what? You still need the local Italian restaurant on the corner too. And you really like that as well. And I don't know why, but that one sentence said, you know what? That's true. I'll be like the cozy bistro. Let her be the 5-star restaurant. That's absolutely true.
That's perfect.
And there you go. And I'll find my own audience. And there you go. And I really mean that. That was such a big moment for me. And so fast forward. And then I was discussing, I was in the entertainment business for all this time. And I sometimes I forget the name of flowers, I can write about them, but then to remember them. And maybe if I was doing this for 25 years, I would know everything.
It would have stuck. Yeah.
Stuck. And then I realized that I'm the instrument, all right, to tell stories. Mm-hmm. And I'm a good researcher. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so what happened is this injustice against florists has always obviously bothered me. So my stories started getting picked up by Aspire Design and Home Magazine and did very well. And they said, look, your work is really resonating here. Do you have any ideas? And that's why it's important to always express your ideas. And I said, well, if you think about it, what have we been doing because of COVID? We're all home watching television and we're thinking of how to redecorate. Why don't we combine the two and do an award show called the Best Dressed Rooms in TV and Film, where we honor the set decorators who create these incredible environments that launch the narrative of the stories and illustrate the characters. and give them the credit that they've never had. And because we have a design loving audience. And the only prerequisite that I really asked for is I want a separate category for floral artistry. And luckily, Steve Mendel and Amy Schneider, they said, you know what? Nobody's ever done this. We will do this, because they also own the most show houses, around the country in the US. And they said, great, we're going to do this. We're going to do the award show. It'll be TV. We're going to do editorial covering it. And you will also get your floral artistry, award.
That's awesome.
Judges. So we right now, starting next week, we're going to, do like best contemporary design and best period design, best rooms that evoke nostalgia, best kitchens and dining room experiences. And, aside from the category of flowers, and then, it's going to be great. And I just think that floral artistry, and in the same way about the slow flower movement. And if you think about it, going back to like what you're doing, which I think is really important to mention, is the slow flower movement has become the instrument. Again, flowers like the Neanderthal that we talked about earlier is also the creating conversations about biodiversity, about equality, about the poisoning of soil. Because here's an example, as you know, and you better than me, that even medicines and food that are grown from soil that has been diminished by chemicals isn't as potent.
Yeah.
So considering all the things that come from the soil in healing, and don't forget, 60% of our food come from flowers. And, many of our medicines and our perfumes and all the things that we love and enjoy that enhance wellness come from flowers. So again, it's another door through flowers to discuss bigger issues, such as the environment, which luckily I love hearing from all the 20-somethings that follow me that on Instagram that, these conversations are great to have. And I think are going to, literally they're creating beds of the future.
Yep. Okay. So quick question. For the next 2 months until the winners are chosen on April 22nd, Aspire Design and Home will showcase the nominated production designers, set decorators, and floral designers. So that's all. Where can people see that?
They'll be able to see it on Aspire Design and Home.
Okay.
And I think it's aspiremetro.com.
Okay. I'll share that link.
It's starting next week, but more importantly, also flowerpowerdaily.com.
Well, I was going to ask you, are you going to also feature a lot of this on Flower Power Daily?
Yes,
as well?
I'm going to feature it all on Flower Power Daily. And I think, again, we can redefine our lives and we don't have to follow the previous script.
Absolutely.
Because we're all, life, is, again, many twists and turns. And one of the things that I do realize is I just love learning and researching flowers. And part of my deal with them on the show is that I never want to leave Flower Power Daily. It's going to grow with me for, the rest of my life. And I couldn't be happier. And I think also if we could, just talk about what that means and what gardening means is that I have a story that we did, like the 5 flowers that teach us about patience, because not every great flower blooms every year. Some is 2 years, some 7 years, which is a lesson to teach us that everyone has their own destiny and to trust it and accept it and find the beauty within that framework. And, I know that Flower Power Daily is what I want to do. And, if you don't ask, you don't get. For most of my career, the boss would say, I want you to do this. And I would say, yes. In fact, I wrote a book. One of my books is called The Need to Say No, because I was so bad at boundaries. Like I would say yes to everything.
I love it.
I was very good about that. I said, no way, buddies, because I grew up with too many brothers. But with certainly in my workspace, and that has been consistent with women a lot. How do you say no? The word no is in the word knowledge. So I was a little nervous about it. And I said, listen, I love this and this is great, but, I want to simultaneously never do Flower Power Daily. And they said, great. So, I'll be doing this sector for them and then, do Flower Power Daily. And then we have something else coming. And again, I want to also add one piece that people said to me when I started this. They said, how are you going to monetize?
Right.
We don't have all the answers. And I know that I have so many brilliant friends who are so much smarter than me. And, they right out of the gate, they were able to figure out how to do that. And I realized that I just trusted that, I had a mistake. It will come. If you really do good work and you're passionate about it, you will find the answers. And I think that not enough business schools, and I covered also business for CNN. So I did a lot. I used to do the show, well, whatever, but what it meant is like, interviewing a zillion entrepreneurs, and everybody used to come and, think that they were a genius because they figured it out because it was working for them. But then if you meet them 5 years from now and they're trying to do something else and they're like shocked that, oh my, that didn't work, because there are lots of factors, and you should never, ever feel that you're failing as long as you're learning. And so maybe I've been knocked around a little bit more than most, but I've never given up, and I continue learning. And the learning is leading me every day to something else, and certainly a more joyful life. And now this just happened. So, it didn't happen 20 years ago.
Right.
It's happening now. But at least it's happening.
Okay. I'm going to throw another category at you for 2022. Wearing Slow Flowers is the integration of where flower farmers and floral designers come together. So all those flower farmers who've grown those flowers that are on the sets of Hollywood shows would love to have props given to them too. So in the future, maybe there's some parallel reporting that can happen about, when you have these beautiful arrangements, have the florists share their sources and who are the farms that they source them from. We're going to do that.
What we have at the end of this, all right, like, because we're having a section after each, category called Shop That Look.
Okay.
But you also understand one thing, like when you're doing The Crown or The Favorite or any of these shows where they're hot lights and it's indoors, and especially if the scene is going to be for 4 or 5, for 5 days and you can't have wilting flowers, they will use, wonderful synthetic flowers. All right.
I always wondered about that. Yeah.
But they have to, though, because, but the outside ones, like for a particular scene, like
in a garden or something.
Garden, like for Emma, for A Place to Call Home, for Bridgerton, those were some of the nominees. Some of their most iconic scenes were in gardens outside, and they were definitely real flowers. In Bridgerton, which is like this hot show right now, when the suitors came in, you saw all these gorgeous arrangements that they were bringing in because it was part of courtship. And yes, indeedy, that's exactly what happened. Those were absolutely real flowers. So you can really tell. But, you look at this wasn't nominated for this year, but, when you look at even the movie The Wife, for instance, all right, which was very somber and that undertone of what was really going on. If you really notice how they used flowers so effectively in that movie so that there was still beauty among the darkness. And they used lavenders, for instance, versus bright colors. But they were strategically placed so that it was still aesthetically pleasing. So, flowers help tell the narrative in really wonderful ways. And that's what we're going to be reporting on.
That's awesome.
Such a skill. And you can do it also for your home. Mm-hmm. And, last but not least, I'm hoping, like, people will say to me, especially I'm around a lot of boys, and my son was a college baseball player, and I would bring all the boys and, wherever we were, and I'd take them to the botanical garden wherever I was. And I would say, I'll pay for lunch, I'm paying for dinner, you're coming with me.
I love it.
So, and once you would expose them to flowers and they would see the majesty and the beauty and the varieties, I just have this picture of my son's friend, Max, literally his nose edged on this rose, and it was discovery. So once people discover flowers, they go down that rabbit hole really big time, and they never regret it. And maybe all of us right now are the people that are just really encouraging and ushering in a whole new era of flower love.
Yeah. And there's the term nature blindness. And I think that we're trying to help people be nature observers and, it'll get rid of that blindness. And the only way they'll do that is by becoming enchanted by a story that connects them with a flower. And that's really what drives you. And in every piece you write.
Some of the shows, like we had Judas and the Messiah, like you don't expect, you're not thinking that the flowers are there, but all of a sudden when we point it out,
right.
And also we did this really cool piece about, which I want to encourage because, we're becoming a more evolved society, and it shouldn't only be men who are giving women flowers.
Right.
We should be giving flowers to everyone.
Right.
And there was this lovely study that we reported on that said that once men got flowers, because it's so unexpected, you're wonderful, congratulations on your job, whatever it is. Once they got it and experienced it, like their voices changed, their eye contact changed. I mean, it was actually measured. So it has the same type of effect. And so hopefully if anybody's listening to this, think about, wow, who should I send flowers to today? Because you will get a positive response. Now, I realize that sometimes it's expensive. Another alternative is collect bud vases. I collect bud vases, and wherever I go, because now I'm the flower girl, right, at Flower Power Daily, I never go anywhere without bringing a flower. And so you don't have to have abundance.
Right.
Just choose a gorgeous flower.
I
one
love it.
flower.
Yeah.
And can I just tell one story that we did for 9/11? That was before the pandemic a year ago. And so I was interviewing this, florist, and he's one of these this old timer, because you realize that in a lot of these flower shows, they've been generations and generations, right? And so I said, what is the most fragrant rose you have in the store? And they went, oh, that's an interesting question. Well, here is this. It just came from, I think, Ecuador. It's gorgeous. So it was a 9/11, and I just took it. I bought the flower. I will go outside, and this couple is fighting. And I don't know, impulsively, I just put the rose underneath both of their noses. And I said, smell this. It's 9/11. Let's think about love. You should see what this did. It immediately completely changed the dynamic. And they said, thank you so much. And then I went, oh, that is so interesting. And then afterwards, I had to go someplace else. I went to the Subway with this rose. Oh, no. The best story is then I went to Best Buy, and I'm online, and I'm and people are all of a sudden sniffing and smelling this incredible fragrant rose. And I'm talking to people, and I even gave it to the sales girl. I said, smell this. This is what one flower can do. And the guy behind me said, I'm so glad you did this. I'm in New York for the first time, and visiting someone, and I want to bring them flowers, and I don't know where to go. And then we told him that there was a floral store right next door, and it created conversations.
I love it.
I have this saying that actually Carolyn Rome is putting in her next book, which I always say is that, even when they're stomped and trampled on, flowers have their inner beauty and resilience. So the whole point is that no matter what happens, it regrows. So use flowers as conversation starters, because their histories are so rich. And you can learn about those histories through Flower Power Daily.
Yep. You're touching on the universal importance of flowers. And I think everyone listening is totally on board with that. You've got a fan base here. You've got a fan in me, and I'm just delighted that we could have this extended conversation. Jill, this is the first of future conversations as your next chapters unfold. But I'm really grateful that we could talk about your news and also what has been going on in the last couple of years with you. I could keep going, but I'm kind of at the end of my time, and I just want to thank you for just being so generous with your stories today.
Well, thank you for being you, because we need these conversations, because it's not economic. It's just finding nature. You can go to a botanical garden. You can go to a nursery, take your children there, go to the nursery. I do all the time just to feel happy. It's accessible to everyone. Just find the tools in your toolbox.
Thank you so much, Jill.
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks so much for joining me today. Talking with Jill is entirely invigorating. Her energy level is bound to boost anyone else's metabolism too. And it's all because of flowers. I want to thank her for giving Slow Flowers a shout out last summer with a story titled 5 Americans Making History in the Flower World. And you can find that post in today's show notes as well. Please check out our show notes to read more about the just announced nominations for Aspire Design and Home magazine's Best Dressed Rooms in TV and Film Awards. Jill is quoted in the press announcement saying, "Because we are spending so much time indoors, we're all talking about what TV shows to watch and ways to redecorate. People are appreciating and focusing on design more than ever, so it's a perfect marriage and perfect timing for an awards program honoring the fabulous interiors of TV shows and films." The awards will be announced on April 22nd, and you can also find a link to the categories, nominations, and judges in our show notes. Our next sponsor thank you goes to the Seattle Wholesale Growers Market, a farmer-owned cooperative committed to providing the very best the Pacific Northwest has to offer in cut flowers, foliage, and plants. The Growers Market's mission is to foster a vibrant marketplace that sustains local flower farms and provides top-quality products and services to the local floral industry. Visit them at seattlewholesalegrowersmarket.com. Earlier this month, Slow Flowers and AIFD, the American Institute of Floral Designers, teamed up to record a webinar called From Farm to Florist, featuring Brad Seeby, General Manager of the Seattle Wholesale Growers Market, Cassie Plummer of Jigbee Flower Farm, Diane and Lillian Calhoun of Calhoun Flower Farm, Amelia Ilo of Rooted Farmers, Gina Thresher, AIFD EMC of From the Ground Up Floral, and Renee Tucci, AIFD, all Slow Flowers members, as well as myself and Marisa Guerrera, AIFD of Debbie's Bloomers. Together, we discussed the benefits and best practices to incorporate locally grown flowers into everyday designs and event work. If you missed the webinar, the free replay video is featured on AIFD's Northeast Chapter's YouTube channel, and I'll share it in today's show notes for you to watch. It was a fantastic session, and I loved the meeting of the minds between florists and flower farmers that took place. Our next sponsor thanks goes to Longfield Gardens, which provides home gardeners with high-quality flower bulbs and perennials. Their online store offers plants for every region and every season, from tulips and daffodils to dahlias, caladiums, and amaryllis. Check out the full catalog at Longfield Gardens. That's longfield-gardens.com. Thanks so much for joining us today. The Slow Flowers podcast has been downloaded more than 703,000 times by listeners like you. Thank you for listening, commenting, and sharing. It means so much. As our movement gains more supporters and more passionate participants who believe in the importance of our domestic cut flower industry, the momentum is contagious. I know you feel it too. I value your support and invite you to show your thanks to support Slow Flowers' ongoing advocacy, education, and outreach activities. You can find the donate button in the column to the right at DeborahPrinzing.com. I'm Deborah Prinzing, host and producer of the Slow Flowers podcast. Next week, you're invited to join me in putting more slow flowers on the table, one vase at a time. And if you like what you hear, please consider logging onto iTunes and posting a listener review. The content and opinions expressed here are either mine alone or those of my guests alone, independent of any podcast sponsor or other person, company, or organization. The Slow Flowers podcast is engineered and edited by Andrew Brenlin. Learn more about his work at soundbodymovement.com.